Welcome to Climbing Together, the small business experience. I'm Beth Houtrow, founder of Climb the Small Business Book Club, and every episode I talk to a small business owner about a mistake that they've made and what they learned from the experience. Mistakes are inevitable, perfection's impossible, so let's embrace the mistake. And today we're so excited to welcome Frank Keck to the podcast. Frank, tell us a little bit about you and your business.
Thanks, Beth. As you said, my name is Frank Keck, so now we've heard that 3 times. My business is CoreBuild, and what we do is we help businesses become more profitable by making their people more valuable. And we do that basically through employee engagement and getting people to care.
Nice. And I know you're based in Kansas City, but do you work with people all over the country or primarily there in Kansas City?
So we are all over the country. We do very little actually here in Kansas City. So we go to a lot of clients in Washington, D.C., a lot in Texas, Florida, California. So I try to pick the places where I want to go because I like the weather. Or
Nice.
go on a vacation or something. So
there you go. Amazing. Very cool. So we're here today to talk about mistakes, right? That's the big message of the podcast. So talk to me about a mistake that you've made as you were growing your business.
Well, gosh, one of the biggest mistakes I've made, and I've made it in different sizes along the way, but I have always been taught the importance of delegation. And so I love to delegate primarily because I'm a big picture person and I don't pay attention to the details. I never have. I have 5 of the 7 types of ADD. And so details and I don't really get along. And so this one particular time, I hired a salesperson and he was very successful where he was and he understood our business. And I said, okay, David, I just need you to come in and I need you to just go sell. And here's how much I need you to sell. Here's a client list. Go to it. And I said, we'll start off on a 6-month contract and here's your guaranteed money and call me when you need me. And so he said, okay, great. I have it. And so off he went. Now he was in Florida. We're in Kansas City. And so I said, well, I haven't heard from David in a little while, a couple of weeks. So I called him. Oh, everything's great. I'm making calls. I'm making headway. And what happened, Beth, is he worked for me for 6 months and I never really checked in on him more than about once or twice a month.
Okay.
And so I delegated. I said, David, here's what I want you to sell. Here's who to sell to. But that was kind of it. So I delegated without really specific directions. And that's exactly what he accomplished. Nothing specific.
Okay.
So it was a very expensive lesson. And, when you delegate, you need to be specific about, okay, here's what the actual job is. Mm-hmm. And here's what success will look like. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that I've learned is to make sure that you're talking about, okay, what is success in this project going to look like? As opposed to just, okay, here's a job, here's some money, go have a good time.
Well, and I've certainly found that one of my problems is that I assign something to someone and I don't realize they don't understand what I've assigned to them, right? I think they do. They appear to understand it. And then you get the result and you're like, oh, this is not at all what I expected. But I know that that's on me, right? I'm the manager. I'm the person who's supposed to be giving the instruction. And so if I don't do that well, then it's on me. And I wish they would ask more questions, of course, but that's not always in people's nature.
Yeah. Beth, one of the things that we teach is it's neuro-linguistic programming, which is just kind of how the brain is designed to communicate. And so one of the elements of that is what we call chunk size. And so you're hardwired at birth, either big chunk or small chunk. And so the people that I typically hire are small chunk. And small chunk means that you're very detail oriented. Mm-hmm. You pay attention to the things that are right in front of you. Big chunk, I'm very big chunk. So I look at the big picture, which a lot of entrepreneurs are, right? We just kind of see the big picture and we don't really pay attention to the details. Well, the small chunk people that we hire, they need those details or they're going to be lost. Right. And I'm like you say, hey, Beth, do you understand what you're supposed to do? Oh, yes. Because they don't want to seem like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
So they're never going to say, I don't understand. They just kind of agree. But in reality, you get a product back that's not what you had envisioned. It's typically because they never saw that vision in the first place.
Right. Yeah.
And
And it,
so I started doing something I call pre-call, which is just saying, okay, so as we delegate this, here's what the end product, here's what success looks like. What would success look like to you? And then let's talk about how to get there. How do you see yourself getting there? And that I do instead of saying, so do you understand what I'm saying? So are you
mhm.
clear on that? So it replaces the yes or no question.
And that makes so much sense because as they talk through what they see the process looking like, you start to get hints like, oh, that's not at all the direction I meant for us to go, right? And so that
Right.
the specificity comes out of that. Very
Yeah.
cool. Nice. And you called it pre-sale? Is that what you called
We
it?
call it pre-call,
Pre-call, right? Pre-call.
right? And so what you're doing is you're calling attention to
Mm,
things ahead of time. And then part of that process too is as they kind of walk you through the steps, because what I found a lot of times is, especially if it's somebody who hasn't done something, they've never done that action before, they don't really have an idea of how they're going to do it.
right.
And so one of the questions I do ask is, so Beth, as you're going along and you're doing this, and you've painted what success looks like, now what I want you to tell me is, what are a couple of roadblocks that you anticipate running into? And so this is the part where I found that there's always a roadblock,
Yeah.
and most people have never anticipated it.
Yep.
And so they get to the roadblock, and then most of the time, because they're human, they just stop working until you come up and go, so how's it going?
Right. You
But if
check
you,
in.
right, but if you've done this pre-call and said, okay, when you hit this barrier, how are you going to handle it?
Hmm.
Sometimes too, they'll say, I have no idea how to handle that. Okay, well, let's walk through that together, right? And then when they hit that barrier, it's not a surprise. They're not overwhelmed. They're like, oh, okay, well, we talked about this. I guess it's not a big deal.
Right. And it establishes if they come up with a roadblock they didn't anticipate or you didn't anticipate, that problem solving is part of the system. And if they don't know how to do it, you're someone they can work with, right, to problem solve as the boss. So it
Absolutely.
creates that relationship. Very cool. I really like that.
And I think you're right. I think, innovation and creativity. And so now the folks on our team, we tell them, look, creativity is critical, and you will never get in trouble for being creative, right? Because I don't think that you can fail. We might not end up where we want to be. We might not get there the way we had anticipated. But if we learn from it, then we can do it better the next time. And so I think I saw this in a startup here in Kansas City on the wall, and they had said first attempt in learning.
Yep.
And so I think, it's always an ongoing education for not only the employee, but also for me.
Right. Yeah. And that's a great lead in to the education idea. Climb the Small Business Book Club is all about our two tenets of continual learning, which inevitably comes from experience.
Right.
But also we love books here. So I know that you have a business actually not a business book, right? More of a, I'm not sure what to call that. Is it a business book that you wanted to
Um,
share with us?
well, I think it's probably written as like psychology, but I
Mm-hmm.
think it has a lot to do with business. And it's called Levels of Energy by Frederick Dotson, Dotson. And and it really helps you to understand, as leaders, whatever energy you give to your people, that's what they're going to give back to you. And so if you give them a higher level energy, they're going to get more things done, such as if you're happy or loving or accepting, right? Any of those actually vibrate at a higher frequency. But if you're apathetic or you're angry or you're sad, right? Or you're shameful, or fearful, like fear is a huge one in our society. A lot of people try to lead by fear. Well, that actually makes your people perform slower and not as effectively because you're giving them that low level energy. And so this book really talks about the impact of your energy on people and how you can change it to get better results. So it's kind of like magic in a way.
Very cool. All right, I'll check it out. It's officially on my list to read.
Awesome.
Nice. All right, and then our second tenet is continual learning and community. So talk to me about how you've built your small business and business community around you, and what it's meant to you in your business success.
So I've built it. I have people that I check in with regularly, and a lot of them started off as clients.
Okay.
And as we've helped their people to grow and helped them to grow, they will come to me and say, you've been so helpful to us. I've got this friend who's got a business, and gosh, they could really use you. And so that's how we've built most of our business. I haven't done any marketing in probably 15 or 20 years. It's simply word of mouth.
Holy
And then
smokes.
speaking at HR groups. And so I'm known to different HR groups as, the guy that comes in, and my book I wrote is called Embrace Your Freakness. And so I'm known as the Freakness guy. And so I kind of am known for that. And so built a community around that where people can come up and ask questions. And then also I'm constantly talking to my community and just saying, what can I do for you? And introducing them to different people. Oh, you had this issue. Okay, well, here's a couple of people that you might want to talk to. And so it's
Nice.
just kind of like what you would do with your kids or your family. It's like, how can I help you to have greater success? And I find what you put out to the universe comes back to you multiplied.
100%. Yeah, I have a social media post coming in a couple days about you have to give before you can expect to get, right? And that like you sound like you're a big connector, and that you're very good at recognizing when there's opportunities for other people to connect. And that often leads to other people connecting you when they see
Yeah.
opportunity options. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I've never thought of myself as a connector as much as I am a server. Right. And
Okay.
so I find if you can serve somebody, I guess that's kind of my way of connecting, right? Is doing
Mhm.
something for you without expecting anything in return. And I find when you do that, that's when you get a lot of stuff in return. But if you do something expecting something in return,
Right.
I think that doesn't work out quite as well for me.
Well, because the other person knows there's an expectation, I think, in some way, and then it doesn't feel as much as a gift as an obligation,
Yeah.
right? And
Good.
then they just feel like they maybe will fulfill that obligation in some way as easy as possible, and get it off their plate,
Yeah.
or it's just not a genuine relationship,
Yeah.
right? If it's transactional. So yeah,
Absolutely. Spot on.
very cool. Well, Frank, that's our podcast. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Beth. Appreciate you
Yes.
having me on.
This podcast is brought to you by Climb the Small Business Book Club, where entrepreneurs go to learn, discuss, apply, and grow. If you enjoyed the episode, be sure to subscribe at Apple, Spotify, or Google Podcasts, or follow us on Instagram at Climb Book Club. And always remember, mistakes are inevitable, perfection's impossible. So let's embrace the mistake.